Hey guys, it's Ornlu, and we are back with another Civ Unique Units In-Depth Dynasties of India DLC. And sorry it's been a few days since the last one, but, well, the Gurjaras here, which is going to be our Civ of the day, they have 3 unique units, more than any other Civ in the game, unless you count Portuguese with the Vitoria, the Caravel, and Organ Gun. But regardless, they not only have some unique units, but they've got some unique units, if you know what I mean. So, we are going to cover in this video the Camel Scout, the Chakram Thrower, and the Shrivamsha Rider. And yeah, there's a lot going on with these guys, so let's just get right into it. Okay, so what we're going to do is start with the Camel Scout, because, well, that's what Gurjaras start with. It is literally one of their Civ bonuses. Start with a Camel Scout. You can only train them in the Feudal Age, but you do get one in the Dark Age, and I'll put the stats for you up on screen right there. And you can see that it has 70 HP, which is going to be more than a Scout Cavalry and an Eagle Warrior. Scout Cavalry have 45, Eagle Scouts have 50. Attack is only 2 though, so that's lower than the 3 of Scout Cavalry and 4 of Eagle Scouts. They have no armor, as opposed to the 2 pierce armor of the other units. Reload time is 2 seconds, which is exactly the same, and the speed and line of sight are the exact same as a Scout Cavalry. Now, their armor class is just Camel, no unique unit armor class. It's the same with Imp Camels. In Age of Empires, units don't gain or lose armor classes upon getting upgrades for them. So that's why I say the Imperial Skirmisher is not considered a unique unit, whereas something like the Genitor is. But I digress. Also, they get no bonus damage in the Dark Age to help balance them out against enemy scouts. But speaking of which, let's just jump right into some testing before we even look at the Feudal Age stats, because there's going to be a difference in terms of how these fights go. Right here, we have a Camel Scout for me, and there's also an Eagle Scout here and a Scout Cavalry. Everybody is in the Dark Age. So, this is actually a relevant fight. Who wins in this just 1v1 in the Dark Age? Because Eagle Scouts beat Scout Cavalry, and that's just an important dynamic that those units have. Aww. And you can see that you lose to the Eagle Scout, and you barely beat the Scout Cavalry. You can see the Eagle Scout still has a decent amount of HP left, and yeah, you barely edge out over the Scout Cavalry. So that's the dynamic with all of those units in the Dark Age. This does make the Camel Scout just kind of a slightly better version of the Scout Cavalry, at least against the other unit, although Scouts can still kill other stuff faster. Alright, now we are in the Feudal Age, and now things are going to be getting interesting. Camel Scout, just like the Scout Cavalry, does gain stats upon reaching the next age, and I'll put those up for you on the screen right now, and there is a lot more to talk about. So, obviously, you can train these units. They are essentially camels, so they cost the same as a camel and can also be trained at the stable, as you can see right here. But this is expensive, man. 55 food, 60 gold, and a 48-second train time is incredibly slow. I think it's slower than every single Feudal Age land unit except the Eagle Scout. And that is just not practical in almost all games, in my opinion. So really, I think just looking at the other sort of stats as a Scout unit, you still have 70 HP. You have 4 attack now as opposed to 2, so still 1 less than a Scout Cavalry. You still have 0 armor. Reload time, still 2 seconds. Your speed is 1.45, which is the same as all of the other camels, so Castle Age camels, Heavy camels, and even Imp camels. And you also have a line of sight of 5. So you actually have less line of sight by 1 compared to a Scout Cavalry, and you move slower. Scouts have a movement speed of 1.55 tiles per second. So really, this isn't looking like a super attractive unit in the Feudal Age. Still, you just have your Camel armor class, but of course where you come in is with the bonus damage. You get +6 versus Cavalry, +3 versus other camels, +3 versus ships, because, you know, ships of the desert and all that, and for some reason +0 versus fishing ships, even though regular Castle Age camels have bonus damage versus fishing ships. I don't know why. But anyway, same test. Now everybody's in the Feudal Age. Let's see how the Scout pecking order goes. As you can imagine, we are going to be clobbering the Scout Cavalry. And versus the Eagle Scout, We're just looking at two units that are essentially doing the exact same amount of damage, but one has 20 more HP. So the Camel Scout does win quite handily over all of the other Feudal Age Scouts, but that's with the caveat that you're likely only getting one of these guys, at least until you're on your way to Castle Age, where then perhaps you can train another unit. Now, what happens to these guys once you hit Castle Age? Great question. You can see that they just become Camel Riders. Like, literally, it's just an automatic upgrade to Camel Riders. They just become your regular camels, and then you go on your merry way from there. You just train camels at your stable, and then you are good to go. So that is pretty much everything there is to know about the Gurjara Camel Scout and just how they function in the early game. You're overall looking at something that is okay in Dark Age, pretty solid in Feudal Age, but way too expensive to make in large quantities. And then once you hit Castle Age, then they just become regular camels. Which does mean you can hit Castle Age with maybe 2 or 3 camels to give you a bit of a power spike, which is nice. So next up, we are going to be taking a look at their castle unique unit of the Gurjaras, the Chakram Thrower. And this guy has been getting a lot of notoriety in the community because these are some interesting units. So before we jump in, what is this? Think of it like a throwing axeman in a Gabetto. It's an infantry unit that deals ranged melee damage, but it also deals pass-through damage, like a scorpion. So think of them as like infantry-scorpions. So with that in mind, let's get into their stats. So their cost is 65 food and 30 gold. This does put them on the more expensive side of infantry unique units, and their train time of 15 seconds is also slower than a lot of infantry unique units. So these guys aren't cheap. They are not something that are super easily spammable, especially since, if you remember the last video on the Dravidians, this is more expensive and slower training than the Arumi swordsman, so Chakrams definitely a bit harder to mass up. Their HP is 40, which is very low. That is, as much as an arbalest, and it's, as much as a militia. These are not tanky units, 1 melee armor, 0 pierce armor. They are quite fragile units. They do have 5 base range, which is pretty solid, and they have a reload time of 2 seconds, completely, normal. Their speed might look super fast at 1.15, but as we'll get to in just a second, this unit does not, or the civilization, Gurjaras, don't have squires, so that's as fast as the unit goes, essentially. But it's still a pretty decent unit speed. So yeah, I'll show you guys the pass-through damage concept in just a second. Now, armor classes, infantry, and unique unit. Nothing too surprising there. Bonus damage, +1 versus buildings, +1 versus eagles. This is not a unit that is relying on bonus damage. Now, pass-through damage. This is something that you're really going to want to keep in mind when playing with Chakram Throwers, because it's really important. And there's going to be some sort of micro things involved that might not be apparent at first glance. Alright, so everybody's on no attack stance here. But you can see that we have these 6 enemy militia all in a line. I have modified them so they have 540 HP just for demonstration purposes, and our Chakram Throwers have 5 base attack. So, just to keep everything with even numbers, if we attack the militia in the front, we would have to imagine that the militia behind them are going to be taking half damage, so that after 2 attacks, they should be down 10 HP on the first one and 5 HP on the other ones. HP values are floating numbers. Whoops. I had accidentally attacked the second one. But, whatever. Point still stands. Everybody at 535 HP, except for the one that was targeted, which is at 530. But, look at this, guys. If we attack the first one, you can see the Chakram is going, it's reaching the last militia, but that's it. It doesn't go any further. And this is like the ballista elephant, guys. But look at this. If I target the last one, the Chakram's going way further. So when you're microing, and it's still hitting everything in between. So what you guys are going to want to keep in mind when playing with this unit is that target the back of your enemy, or at least the middle. As far as you can comfortably go within range, because that's how you're going to be getting the most damage out of this guy. Because it is pretty darn relevant, as you can see. Just being able to extend the range of your attack effectively, just based on what you are attacking. Now, with that in mind, let's take a quick look at the elite version. The elite Chakram Thrower. Same cost, same train time. We're now looking at 50 HP as opposed to 40 HP, so you are getting, nice 10 HP increase. Your attack and range are both increased by 1 to 6 and 6, respectively, as is your line of sight, actually. Your armor is exactly the same. Reload time, speed, pass-through damage, it is all the same. So really, with the elite upgrade, you're just looking at a little bit of a buff, but when you're looking at a unit that has as low sort of general stats as the Chakram Thrower, just every extra little bit of, points you can get in HP, damage, range, all that stuff, it can really add up. So the elite upgrade, don't have it on the card, but it does cost 1,000 food and 650 gold. So this is, again, more expensive than Elite Arumi, and it's also going to be more expensive than Elite Gulab, which we will have in the next and final video. And that kind of brings us to, okay, what upgrades does this unit benefit from? So what's interesting, and as I alluded to earlier, is that the Gurjaras have really bad infantry. Like, really bad infantry. They don't get pikemen. They don't get squires. But they do benefit from arson due to Chakram Throwers. Obviously, they benefit from the elite upgrade. They do benefit from Kshatriyas, so going from 65 food down to 49 food. So just a nice little boost as far as that goes. The benefit from conscription, you train them at castles, surprise, surprise. And then blacksmith, you benefit from all of your upgrades. Remember, no blast furnace with this civilization, so you are capping out at 8 damage, which seems really low. But you'll see that these guys are gonna be alright, don't you worry. And then at the monastery, the Gurjaras actually do have heresy, but they do not have faith, but the Chakrams are not gonna be something you want to convert anyway. Now that we have all the basics down for this unit, let's see how they perform in some tests. Alright, so here we are, testing, gonna be just like normal. We've got 20 elite Chakram Throwers, so we are gonna be working with the Imperial Age version of the unit, and first up we're gonna be looking at enemy champions. Now, before I get into this, I should say that Chakrams really benefit from being massed up, even more so than most other units in the game, because you have to treat them kind of like an archer, where like 3 archers are not that scary, but 30 archers are, even relative to facing like 3 swordsmen and 30 swordsmen. So this is going to be making the Chakram Throwers look really good, or at least look at their best, as you can see in this testing. So obviously we're going to want to micro just a little bit, going to try and aim for center mass. But you can see that despite being outnumbered by 5, yeah, the Chakrams, they don't really care at all, in the slightest. So with the power of micro, we do have 9 of our Chakrams left. So obviously, they can work pretty well versus swordsmen, and by extension versus halbs. Now, how about versus archers? We've got some Saracen Arbalests here, 20 versus 20, just kind of even-dish out the resources. And remember, these guys have no pierce armor, but they are still dealing that blast, or at least pass-through damage. So, throw your frisbees like you just don't care. Oh look, what do you know? They literally don't care at all. They shred arms. There's 11 of them left, man. Chakrams are such insane units. You would think that archers would be really good against them, but, you're fast enough and you have enough range that, archers, like, they need to be clumped up, and just the way I spread them out in the scenario editor, you can see that the arbs, they weren't all that clumped up, and it's just the strength of these, moving, speedy scorpion infantry units. Alright, how about versus hand cannons, right? These guys are supposed to counter infantry units, but they are still kind of flimsy. But here we can see the low HP of the Chakram really come into play. And for what it's worth, the hand cannons have 1 melee armor. So you can see that this is the first fight that the Chakrams are losing decisively, even when, being put in mass in their sort of best case scenario situation, hand cannons are still going to mop them up. So if you've got some shooty boys, go shooty McShoot shoot. Alright, so moving on to cavalry now. We have some fully upgraded Spanish paladins. We still have our 20 Chakrams. We've got double the numbers. Let's see how we go here. Again, just some basic micro here from me. I mean, it's still Ornlu micro. You can never expect too much from it. Anyway, as you can see, Paladins are simply too fast and have too much HP. Remember that the base attack of the Chakram is still very low. So, all the Paladins have taken damage, and some of them are pretty low in the HP department, but, you know, you're still getting clobbered by heavy cavalry, for sure. Alright, so our last test of these guys is going to be against Hussars. Going to be 23 of them. And before I start, I guess I should just mention that these guys are very weak to onagers and siege onagers. Yes, they deal melee damage, but their range isn't high enough, and they are way too flimsy. So, like, if you have siege onagers or even, like, you know, well-microed bombard cannons, the Chakrams are still going to die super hard. But with that in mind, let's see how they do versus the Hussars. I mean, they do at least have one melee armor, which is kind of helpful versus these lower attacking Hussars. Chakrams! And you can see that, yep, Chakrams still, with some micro, are able to clean up even when slightly outnumbered by the Hussars. So if you want to deal with the Chakrams, get hand cannons, get some paladins, and don't rely on arbalests. Cav archers perform a little bit better than arbalests, but are still a little suspect. And then if you get onagers, siege onagers, like, you want some expensive units when fighting the Chakram Throwers. Really strong unit overall, and it fills an important role in the Gurjara tech tree because they are very good in the late game when massed, and they are excellent when you have a meat shield in front of them of all of your cavalry units. Alright, now we come to our third and final unique unit with the Gurjaras, the Shrivamsha Rider. Now, these guys are super interesting, just like all the other units from this DLC. They are essentially your replacement to the Knight line. You can see real quick here in the stable, well, you can't because I'm in Feudal Age, but trust me, they replace the Knight line. Now, what do? It's kind of confusing. You have this white HP, or white bar below the HP, and you might think that this is a charge attack like the Irumi and the Kustier. No, it's like the opposite of that. It's like a shield bar, as I will call it. And with that in mind, let's just get right into the stats because this is kind of a confusing unit. So, as far as their cost goes, 70 food and 20 gold is very cheap, and 20-second train time also pretty quick. So these guys are way cheaper than knights, and especially once you get the Kshatriyas tech to reduce their food cost, like, you can just spam these guys for days. But their HP is extremely low at 55. I mean, that's less than a light cav. Their attack, also not amazing at just 8. Their armor, also not amazing at just 0 melee armor, 1 pierce armor. But holy bananas, look at that movement speed. 1.6. That is faster than a Scout Cavalry. These are literally the fastest land units in all of Age of Empires 2. They are some speedy horsey boys. Reload time also, 1.75 seconds. That is a little bit faster than a Knight, and just, again, one of the faster attacking melee units in the game. Line of sight, 5. Decent enough for a raiding unit. Shield charges, as I call them, 5, and a recharge rate of 0.33 per second. I'll get to that in just a second. Armor classes, cavalry, and unique units, so they are considered unique units by the game, and they're cavalry, that look like cavalry. And they have no bonus damage to speak of. So you might be thinking, these are some weird stats. What is going on with the shield charges, as I call them? Well, let's go over here. So right here we have a fully upgraded Spanish archer, so imposing, and this generic Shrivamsha Rider. Now, once I set the attack stance to enemy, you can see that each arrow is taking away a charge from the Shrivamsha Rider. And if it has less than 1 worth of charge left, it will take the full damage from the ranged attack. You can see that it's finally nice, but it took a long time for that archer to kill a unit that only had 55 HP and no upgrades, right? But wait, it gets more interesting. Alright, same situation as before, but this archer now has plus 100 attack. Does this make a difference? Nope. The charge guys the shield charges, it's based on arrows fired, not damage. But you can see that once it punches through the all of those charges, then it's taking the full, like, 100 damage, and the Shrivamsha Rider gets one shot. But that's something that's really important to remember, is it's about quantity of arrows coming at you, not the quality of them. So lots and lots of ranged units is going to be more effective here than small numbers of high-powered ranged units. Also, again, this would be a very good time to mention, yes, this only applies to ranged attacks, so stuff that deals pierce damage. It does not apply to melee attacks. So, with this in mind, what do the elite stats look like for the Shrivamsha Rider? Well, first, the upgrade cost is 800 food and 600 gold, so reasonably expensive. You know, you're looking at something that's more expensive than Hussar, it's more expensive than Heavy Camel, it's more expensive than Cavalier, it's just not more expensive than Paladin. So it is pretty expensive, but what are you getting out of it? Cost, train time is the same. HP, you are getting 15 more HP, so that's pretty relevant for a unit that has such low HP. Attack is 11, so you're getting 3 more attacks, so that's quite nice. Armor is the same, speed is the same, reload time is the same. You actually also get 1 more line of sight, so you're a little bit better at raiding. Here's the important one, guys. Shield charges have been increased to 7 as opposed to 5, and the recharge rate, I think that's just been increased so that it takes the same amount of time for both versions of the unit to get to a new charge, as I call it. But it means that it's going to take more arrows to punch through that elite Shrivamsha Rider shield. What upgrades do these units benefit from? Well, it's, I think, going to be pretty obvious. You benefit from the elite upgrade, shocker. Husbandry, you go even faster. I mean, look at these guys zoomy zoom zoom around. Okay, I'm on fast speed. Look at these guys still zoomy zoom zoom around. Benefit from bloodlines, really important for this unit because you have such low HP. Blacksmith upgrades, cavalry upgrades. You don't have blast furnace with this, I remember. Makes sense. You benefit from conscription, and like I said earlier, you benefit from heresy, of course. They benefit a lot from kshatriyas. Now only costing 53 food and 20 gold after that upgrade. That is a very cheap and spammable raider. Now that we have everything we need to know about the Shrivamsha Rider, let's go see how they perform in a test. Alright, so here we are, post-Imperial Age, full upgrades on our Shrivamsha Riders, and now we're going to be going up against some champions. I'm just going to say right off the bat, guys, as a rule, versus melee units equals bad, versus ranged units equals good. So let's see. I mean, when the shield isn't being applied, it's not that great. I mean, these are equal numbers of units. And you can see that the champions are going to be able to clean up reasonably decisively. Faster attack speed just doesn't really matter that much when your base attack is a little bit lower. Your HP is not that high. And, yeah, champions, they're still going to be doing pretty well here. And then, if the champions are going to be winning, I think I don't even need to show you how halbs are going to be doing. But now, let's move on to arbalests. Equal numbers, because remember, Shrivamsha Riders are so cheap. So let's see how they're going to be performing against these guys. Where the heck are you going, my dude? And you can see, like, how many charges have to be punched through. And look at this. Oh my god, they just killed 15 arbalests and didn't lose more than 1. And the shields, like, they come back really quickly. So yeah, these guys are pretty darn insane versus archers. That super fast movement speed, also quite helpful. We literally only lost 1. And because, you know, the shield doesn't come out of your HP, we only lost 1 and then, what? 45 HP after that. Oh man, these guys are insane versus archers. Just to hammer home the point, let's go now against Cav Archers. Now, Cav Archers are more expensive than the Shrivamsha Riders, so, I mean, the even numbers does favor them a little bit, but something tells me that we are going to be A-okay here in Shrivamsha Rider land. Still haven't lost 1 yet. Okay, just lost 1. There's 2. There's 3. We lost exactly 3 units, and no HP on the other ones, with equal numbers against heavy Cav Archers. And it's not like the Cav Archers can even run, because the Shrivamsha Riders have 0.2 movement speed faster. Oh my goodness, this unit's insane versus ranged units. Now, how about versus Hussars? These are melee units, but they are a little bit on the weaker side. And of course, one unit's a trash unit and one unit is not a trash unit, but the extra Protoss shield is not coming into play. And you can see that they're trading pretty evenly. Looks like the Shrivamsha Riders are going to win by just a little bit, but not by too much. They have 5 less HP, but they attack a little bit faster. And let's see, it's 11 damage to 13, so yeah, the Shrivamsha Riders are going to be trading a little bit favorably versus the Hussars. You know, they're going to absolutely clobber skirmishers, but it's just going to be versus those melee units that they really struggle against. Now, one more test. I gave myself 5 more Shrivamsha Riders, and here we have an Aztec castle. So, no HP upgrades, but it's still a fully upgraded castle with Bracer and murder holes. Now, 20 Paladins do not kill a castle. 20 Tarkans annihilate a castle. Most other cavalry units not doing so well. How are the Shrivamsha Riders going to be doing when faced against castle fire? I mean, they're slowly losing numbers for sure, and this isn't a speedy process by any means. I actually have no idea how this one's going to go. I haven't tried this test before. I imagine that the castle's still going to stand, but for the amount of resources that you're spending, you're doing pretty well. And this is probably going to be a closer thing than one might expect. I mean, that fast attack speed is pretty darn nifty. And remember, Gurjara siege elephants are also super good against buildings. Actually, hold on, who's gonna win this? Are the Shrivamsha Riders going to be able to do it? And like, you know, if you can see that they're doing this well versus castles, then you can just imagine how well they're going to be doing versus town centers. Oh wow, I think they're going to do it. Wow, that's impressive, guys. This is an impressive unit. I feel like people are sleeping on them. Like, yeah, they suck in melee, but I mean, against anything ranged, it's like a horsey Huskarl, man. Yeah, the Shrivamsha Riders are barely going to beat it. So, no masonry or architecture, but 20 Shrivamsha Riders with full upgrades destroyed a castle. Costing, what, 52 food and 20 gold? 53 food and 20 gold, so yeah, that's pretty wild. And with that, guys, we're gonna have all of our Gurjara unique units. A lot of really interesting, kind of situationally powerful options. You know, the Shrivamsha Riders, they just shred anything with pierce damage and then die horribly to anything with melee damage. The Chakram Throwers don't have them go up against hand cannoneers en masse or paladins, but other than that, once you get a good amount of them, they will be starting to shred everything. And then you have your good camels and your good siege elephants. There's just a lot of interesting things with this civ, not to mention their really unique Dark Age. So there's, I think, maybe even more to explore with Gurjaras than any of the other new civs. And it's one that I'll definitely be interested to sort of see going forward. Now, I hope you guys found this video interesting. I hope I didn't make it too confusing or I put enough information in there. I did try, to take as deep a dive as possible without being, like, too bogged down and everything. So definitely leave a like if you guys enjoyed, and I will see you all next time.